that was my reality. My name is Natalie Carter. And for as long as I can remember, I wasn't just unloved. I was unwanted. Not in a dramatic, diary-writing teenager kind of way.
No.
I mean genuinely, truly rejected. I was the child whose existence made people sigh, shift uncomfortably, or look away. A shadow they tried to ignore. A reminder of a past they wanted to bury. I was the mistake that screamed too loudly at family dinners, the girl they didn't clap for at graduations, the one who always stood at the edge of every group photo, if I even made it into the frame at all. Growing up in suburban Georgia, you'd think I had the kind of life people write songs about. White picket fences, freshly cut lawns, lemonade in the summer. But my version was colder. Sharper. My world was filled with icy glares, whispered comparisons, and silences that sliced sharper than any insult. I remember the day it all changed. The day I realized that this wasn't just childhood insecurity, that it wasn't me imagining the distance. I was 14. We had family over for dinner. Everyone laughing, plates clinking, stories flowing. I stood quietly at the doorway to the kitchen, holding the mashed potatoes, waiting to be told where to sit. Aunt Diane looked up, her voice loud and unfiltered. Why is she even here? I thought you were sending her to live with her father's side. My mother didn't flinch. She didn't protest. She didn't defend me. She sipped her wine and said, still working on it. Still working
On it.
I don't remember dropping the dish, but I remember the sound it made. Glass against tile, sharp and final. The laughter died. My cheeks flushed. But I didn't cry. Not that night. That night I locked something inside me. A seed of silence, one I didn't even know would grow into something much greater. Years went by. I became used to being left out of plans, forgotten in holiday greetings, and offered hand-me-down dreams. High school was a blur of invisible days. Teachers barely remembered my name. I stopped raising my hand, stopped expecting anything. When you're treated like a ghost, you start acting like one. But here's the thing about ghosts. They see everything. And they never forget. I noticed the way my cousin Sophia got everything handed to her on a silver platter. When she wanted piano lessons, she got them. I asked once. Just once. I was told, we can't afford luxuries for someone who's not serious. When Sophia wanted to model, they paid for her portfolio, bought her heels, sent her to LA for auditions. When I got accepted into a local writing competition and won second place in the entire state, my mother's only response was, do they give money for second? Everything I did was dismissed, undermined, ignored. But what they didn't realize was, every insult was a brick. Every cold shoulder, a nail. Every moment I was made to feel like nothing became the foundation of something they'd never see coming. Because while they were laughing, I was learning. While they were praising Sophia, I was planning. While they were turning their backs, I was looking forward. But life wasn't done humiliating me. I was 17 when the final blow came. I'd just come home from school, a brown envelope in my hand. Columbia University. I remember staring at it for hours before opening it. Not out of fear, but because it felt like a dream. When I finally tore the seal, my breath hitched. Accepted. Full scholarship. I ran to tell my mother. She was in the kitchen, folding towels. Always folding something, like if she'd just kept her hands busy, she wouldn't have to deal with her heart. Mom, I got in. Columbia. Full ride. She paused. Blinked. Then she said, that's far. How are you even going to afford living there? No congratulations. No hug. Not even a smile. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and ask what I'd ever done to deserve this coldness. But instead, I nodded. Like always. Swallowed my pride. Walked back to my room. What I didn't know then was that they had already decided something behind my back. Something that would almost break me. 3 days later, I found out Sophia had also applied to Columbia. And didn't get in. But she was going to New York anyway.
How?
Because my mother and a generous loan from my uncle were pooling money together to send her to a private art school in Manhattan. They'd found her a place to stay. Made all the plans. No one mentioned it to me. So I packed my bags quietly. Told no one. Anne left. On a bus. Alone. No send-off party. No goodbye dinner. Just me, a suitcase, and a dream nobody believed in. New York wasn't kind at first. I worked night shifts, skipped meals, lived with 2 roommates in a shoebox apartment that smelled like burnt toast and pipe mold. But I had books. I had fire. And I had this unspoken promise to myself. One day, they'd know my name. And not as a whisper, but as a roar. I didn't realize how long it would take, or how painful the journey would become. But I never forgot the look on my mother's face when she said, "Still working on it." The irony?
So was I.
Only now. I wasn't just working on surviving. I was working on winning. Sometimes I wonder if I was born at the wrong time in the wrong place, to the wrong people. My mother, Elaine Carter, was the type of woman who cared more about appearances than actual emotions. If you saw her at Sunday brunch or on the steps of our local church, you'd think she was kindness personified. Well-dressed, polished, all smiles. But behind closed doors, that polish turned into pressure. Those smiles? They vanished before the front door, even closed. She had me when she was just 19. My father? I only ever saw him in a blurry photo hidden at the bottom of an old dresser drawer. His name was scribbled on the back. Devin, 1997. That's all I ever got. She never spoke of him. Only called him a mistake she couldn't undo. And I, by default, became that mistake's living, breathing reminder. From the beginning, I felt like I was just inconvenient. Elaine went on to marry a man named Peter Graham when I was 5. I wasn't even invited to the wedding. I sat in the neighbor's house that day, coloring silently while the woman I called Mom started a new life 2 blocks away. She moved in with Peter, and for a while I lived with my grandmother until she passed when I was 7. That's when I moved in with them. That's when everything got worse. Peter had a daughter from a previous marriage, Sophia, the golden child, blonde curls, big green eyes, a voice like sugar, and a laugh that made everyone around her smile. She was just a year older than me, and from the moment I stepped into that house, it was clear I was the guest and she was the daughter. Sophia's room had fairy lights, pink wallpaper, and a canopy bed. Mine was the basement, cold, unfinished, with a leaking pipe that dripped into a metal pan at night like a ticking clock of my worth. But I tried. God, I tried. I cleaned more than I had to, stayed quiet when they forgot to make me a plate, smiled through school plays where no one showed up. I became what they wanted, invisible. Yet even in my invisibility, I watched. Peter pretended to like me, but he was never cruel, just distant, detached. He always referred to me as Elaine's daughter. Never our girl. Never Natalie. My existence was tolerated, not embraced. Sophia was different. At first, I admired her. She had this light. People loved her. Teachers, classmates, neighbors. Even my mother looked at her like she was proud. I wanted to be like her. So when I was 9, I begged to take dance classes with her. Sophia said nothing. Just looked at my hand-me-down sneakers and smirked. My mother simply shook her head. No point wasting money if you're going to quit halfway like everything else. I hadn't even started. It became clear over the years, Sophia didn't see me as a sister. I was the charity case, the comparison point, the not as pretty, not as talented, not worth investing in girl who just happened to share a roof. She never bullied me outright. No, Sophia was too smart for that. She weaponized subtlety. She didn't eat lunch today? Oh, I thought she brought her own. Natalie, are you wearing my perfume? I told everyone you were a cousin from down south. It's just easier that way. By the time I was 16, I had learned not to ask for anything, not even love. But in secret, I poured myself into something that didn't ask questions or keep score, writing. I would write stories late into the night. In notebooks, on scraps of paper, on the backs of receipts. It was the only place I had control. My characters had power. They spoke back. They didn't whisper behind my back or measure my worth in attention. Mrs. Beckett, my 11th grade English teacher, noticed. She pulled me aside one day after class. Have you ever thought about applying for the state writing program, Natalie? Your voice is raw, but powerful. It was the first compliment I could remember receiving from an adult in years. I applied. I got in. I placed second in the final competition. I still have the letter they sent me. I read it more than I should. But when I showed it to my mother, she read it in silence, then folded it in half and handed it back. You should focus on real opportunities. Writing is a hobby, not a career. And with that, my one moment of pride was buried beneath her disappointment. But here's where things began to shift.
Slowly.
Quietly. I took her words, and instead of letting them crush me, I stored them away like fuel. And with each slight, each rejection, my mind started building a version of myself that I wanted to become. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for survival. I got a job at the local bookstore. Saved every dollar. Tutored younger students in English and essay writing. I avoided parties, skipped prom, and poured my soul into every college application I could afford to send. And then, Columbia happened. That letter? It didn't just represent a university acceptance. It represented freedom. Until, of course, I found out about Sophia's sudden move to New York. About the apartment they found her. About how my mother, the same one who told me there wasn't enough money for dorms or meal plans, had quietly supported Sophia's dream. I still remember walking past her room that night, seeing the open suitcase, hearing her giggle on the phone with her friends. Yeah, my mom hooked me up. Can't wait to be in Manhattan. Natalie? Oh, she's doing her thing.
My thing.
As if I were some side character in her glamorous life. That was the moment I stopped wishing for love and started planning for independence. New York City had a way of either chewing you up or sharpening you. In my case, it did both. The Columbia campus was beautiful, but intimidating. Surrounded by kids who had grown up in private schools, international programs, and elite circles, I often felt like a stranger in a world built for someone else. I lived in a shared dorm at first. My roommate, Casey, was kind but loud and constantly FaceTiming her boyfriend. I didn't mind. I had learned to block out noise long ago. What mattered was, I was there. I made it. Despite the silence back home, despite the doubt, I was walking those ivy-covered paths. Still, it wasn't easy. I worked evenings at a diner on 108th Street, bussed tables, and studied between shifts. Some nights, my legs ached so badly I'd sit in a tiny staff bathroom just to cry quietly, making sure no one heard. One night, just past midnight, I got a message from an unknown number. Hope you're not struggling too hard. Would hate to see you give up now. It was Sophia. Attached was a picture of her in some fancy rooftop bar, glass in hand, fake laugh on full display. She had moved into the city just a month after I did. Only, unlike me, she lived in an apartment paid for by our family, attended a boutique acting school, and seemed to exist solely to remind me that she was still ahead. At least, in her mind. I tried to ignore it, to keep my head down. But slowly, the conflicts began to pile up. At Columbia, I joined a small creative writing workshop. It was led by Professor Reed, a wiry, thoughtful man with a quiet smile and an intimidatingly brilliant mind. He loved structure, clarity, emotion. But more than anything, he loved truth. Natalie, he told me during our second one-on-one meeting, your stories are painful, but they breathe. They hurt because they feel like yours. They were. I wrote about betrayal, about mothers who didn't clap, about sisters who smiled with knives behind their backs. I didn't name names, but the blood on those pages was real. Each piece I submitted was a confrontation. Not with Sophia, not with my mother, but with myself. But word got around. By junior year, someone had leaked one of my short stories. It was a fictionalized piece about two girls, one unloved, the other worshipped. One who became a writer, the other an actress. Sophia found it. She showed up at my apartment uninvited, wearing heels, red lipstick, and that same condescending grin she'd mastered since we were children. Wow, she said, holding a printout of the story. So now I'm your muse? I stood in the doorway, blocking her from entering. It's fiction, I said flatly. She laughed.
Sure.
And I'm the Queen of England. She took a step forward, tone darkening. You think you're going to humiliate me through your writing and come out the hero? I said nothing. She leaned in. You'll always be a side character, Natalie. The girl people forget. And then she turned and walked away, heels clicking like a countdown. I should have broken then. But something inside me cracked in a different way. It didn't break me. It forged me. I started submitting my work to bigger contests, literary magazines, online blogs. Every rejection letter stung, but a few turned into yeses. By my final semester, a piece of mine had gone viral on Medium, The House That Forgot Me. It was a raw, essay-style reflection about growing up as the extra child. About walking out of a house that never once asked if you were okay. About finding your voice in the silence. It had over 1 million views in a week, and it got picked up by a publisher. Suddenly, I was that girl from the story. Interviews followed, podcast requests, and an email from a well-known literary agent. Then came the twist. 3 weeks before graduation, I got an email. Subject: urgent. Legal claim on published story. Sophia had filed a complaint. She claimed the story defamed her, damaged her image, and was an exploitative and emotionally manipulative piece of fiction that misrepresented their relationship. I stared at the screen for an hour. Not because I was afraid, no. Because part of me was furious. She still thought she could erase me. Even now. But what she didn't expect was that I'd come prepared. Because everything in my piece was documented. I had changed names, events, and any identifiable detail. The emotions were real. But the law was on my side. My publisher stood by me. The lawsuit was dismissed within weeks. But that wasn't the real victory. No, the real victory came in the form of a private message. From my mother. I read your piece, it said. It hurt, but it was true. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a single, 9-word acknowledgement that, for the first time in my life, validated me. And I didn't cry. Because I didn't need her love anymore. I had built a life that didn't require it. But Sophia wasn't done. She started sending subtle jabs on social media, accusing certain people of exploiting family trauma for clout. Her followers echoed her. Called me attention-seeking. A liar. At first I wanted to respond. To fight back. But then something strange happened. An actress reached out to me on Instagram. She had read my work and wanted to talk. She said she saw herself in my story. That she too had grown up in someone else's shadow. She asked if I would consider co-writing a screenplay based on the piece, with her producing. And just like that, my story was being optioned. For a film. I wish I could say I felt triumphant in that moment. But what I felt was peace. Because I had spent years trying to prove I mattered. That I was more than the forgotten girl in the background. And now, I didn't need to prove it anymore. The world saw me. More importantly, I saw myself. It was a rainy Thursday in May when everything came full circle. I had just finished a pitch meeting with the production house that had optioned the screenplay. I walked out of the building with soaked hair, my boots splashing through puddles, but my heart felt lighter than it ever had before. Because they loved it. My story, once buried in crumpled notebooks and unheard whispers, was now being shaped for the screen. Real cameras. Real audiences. Real power. I remember standing outside the cafe across from Lincoln Center, watching people rush under umbrellas. And then, a familiar voice behind me. Natalie. I turned slowly, and there she was. Sophia. No makeup this time. No lipstick. No curated Instagram smile. Just her. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her coat was damp. Her hair curled at the edges from the mist. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I couldn't see the confident Sophia I had grown up loathing. She wasn't the golden girl anymore. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. We stepped inside the cafe, ordered tea, and sat by the window. It was quiet for a while, until she said, "They cast someone to play me." I nodded. She's not playing you. She's playing a fictional character inspired by a memory. She gave a bitter laugh. That memory is mine too, you know. And that's when I looked at her, not with hate, not even with anger, but with understanding. No, Sophia, I said. You got to live the memory. I got to survive it. She blinked. You had the spotlight. You had the praise. You had the love. I was a ghost in that house. And you still tried to haunt me after I left. I didn't know it hurt you that much, she whispered. I stared at her. You didn't care enough to ask. She looked down, twisting the ring on her finger. I guess I was jealous. I froze. That wasn't a sentence I ever expected to hear. Jealous. I echoed. You had something I never did, she continued. You didn't need approval to keep going. I always did. I needed Mom to love me.
Dad, to notice me.
You? You didn't crumble when no one clapped. You just got louder. I almost laughed. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep? I said. How many times I wanted to give up. I didn't feel strong, Sophia. I felt invisible. Her eyes glistened. You're not invisible now. No, I said, voice soft but sure. Now I'm seen. By the world. By myself. And, honestly, that's enough. She looked out the window, nodding slowly. Congratulations, she said. And I could tell she meant it. Then she stood. I hope the movie does well. And without another word, she left. That moment wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was closure. Weeks passed. I graduated with honors. The screenplay entered pre-production. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every item in it, every book on the shelf, every dish in the cupboard was earned. One evening, I sat on the floor of my apartment, watching the sunset stretch across the skyline. My laptop open, blank page waiting. And then came the knock. 3 times. Hesitant. When I opened the door, I froze. It was my mother, Elaine. She looked older. Or maybe just more real. The perfect makeup was gone. The carefully chosen outfit replaced by something plain. She held a manila envelope in her hand. I thought you might want this, she said. I took it. Inside were a stack of childhood drawings. A few old poems. One was a short story I wrote at 11, The Girl in the Basement. I kept some, she said, voice shaking. Even if I never showed it. I didn't speak. She sighed. I failed you. I looked at her.
Yeah.
You did. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know how to love you right. I was scared. Of being a bad mother. Of admitting I was wrong. And I let that fear make me cold. I waited. I'm not asking for anything, she added. Not forgiveness. Not a relationship. Just, I wanted you to know I've been reading everything you've written. And I'm proud. That word.
Proud.
It hit harder than I thought it would. I nodded. Thank you for saying that. And with that, she left. It didn't fix everything, but it was a beginning. Months later, the film premiered. I sat in the back row, hands trembling as the lights dimmed and the opening scene rolled. It was a girl in a dim basement room, light from a small window casting shadows across the floor. She wrote in a notebook, her face serious, her eyes wide. And the voiceover began. I was the child no one saw. The girl who learned to listen to the silence and one day, speak louder than it. By the end of the screening, people were in tears. When the credits rolled, they clapped. For me. For my story. Afterward, a woman came up to me. She was maybe in her late 40s, glasses fogged from crying. Thank you, she said. You told my story too. And that's when I realized this was never about revenge. It was about liberation. For me. For women like me. For the invisible girls who found their voice through the pages they wrote. I still get messages. Some from strangers. Some from people I grew up with who never knew what I went through. Even one from Peter. A simple line. I was wrong. You were never just Elaine's daughter. I didn't reply. Because I didn't need to. Today, I teach creative writing. I mentor young women. I tell them their stories matter, no matter how ugly, no matter how ignored. I tell them not to wait for permission to speak. Because the truth is, the ones they unwanted, betrayed, dismissed, We don't stay broken. We rise. And sometimes, just sometimes, we have the last laugh. Do you know what it feels like to be silenced before you've ever spoken? To grow up in a home where your name is barely echoed, where your ideas are always too much or not enough? To walk through your own childhood as though you were just visiting, watching others be celebrated while you learn to be invisible? I do. And I know something else, too. That silence is not your destiny. Your voice, cracked, scared, unpolished, is more powerful than anyone can measure. There are thousands of Natalies out there. Women who were passed over, underestimated, dismissed. Women who were told they were too emotional, too sensitive, too opinionated. Girls who were not the favorite daughter, the golden sister, the treasured friend. Some of them gave up. Some of them still believe they are not worthy of being heard. But others? They took every rejection and built their own stage. They wrote their stories in midnight journals. They stitched their broken pieces into armor. And they decided that if the world wouldn't applaud them, they'd clap for themselves. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who should have protected you, if you've ever felt like the underdog in your own life, if your own family made you feel like a background character, then this story is yours too. Because this isn't just about Natalie. It's about you, and your strength, and your power to reclaim your voice. Let me ask you something. What if the person you've been waiting to acknowledge you never does? What if the apology never comes? What if the people who hurt you don't change? Will you still move forward? Will you still tell your truth? Will you still write your story, boldly, beautifully, with every scar showing? Here's what I know now after everything. Betrayal can bury you, but it can also plant you. I grew in the shadows. I bloomed in the silence. And when the world least expected it, I rose. I laughed. Not out of cruelty. Not for revenge. But because I was finally free. Free from the lies. Free from the expectations. Free from the need to be loved by people who didn't even see me. I used to think success meant proving them all wrong. But now I understand. True success is becoming someone you're proud to live with every day. It's waking up and looking in the mirror and saying, you didn't quit. You didn't fold. You are still here. That's worth more than applause. That's legacy. So, if you've ever been betrayed and you're still standing, then you've already won. And if you're still struggling, still hurting, let this be your sign. Don't give up. Your story matters. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to believe in you. Because one day, you'll walk into a room and the people who ignored you won't be able to look away. One day, your voice will echo louder than their doubt. One day, the same ones who broke you will watch as you soar beyond their reach. And when that day comes, smile.
Laugh.
Not for revenge, but because you made it. The girl they forgot is unforgettable now. The voice they tried to silence is now a chorus. And the life they thought they destroyed is just beginning. What will you write next? What truth will you speak into this world? Who might you inspire just by surviving? You don't need permission to shine.
You were born to.